Cynthia Erivo had everything: the voice, the talent, and the industry hype. But somewhere between everything, all went terribly wrong thanks to her association with a certain someone. Subscribe now because what's coming next will shock you. The Rise. Cynthia Yvonne Erivo was born in London in 1987 to Nigerian immigrant parents. She was married when she was just a young child. Seeing such a trauma at such a young age was not easy. She was raised by her mother alongside her siblings. That's where she developed an early interest in performance art that would eventually define her entire career. She even studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, graduating in 2010 with a degree. From there, she immediately began building her profile through stage shows and British television appearances. But every artist has a big breakthrough, and hers came with her Broadway debut in The Color Purple, where she portrayed Celie, which earned rave reviews from the critics. The New York Times even wrote that her sobering and stirring portrayal brought the kind of praise that can change a performer's career. And to say the least, they weren't wrong. That's when awards started coming in. Suddenly, Hollywood was paying attention to this new British artist with amazing vocals and the stage presence that was almost unmatched. Cynthia's film debut came in 2018 with Bad Times at the El Royale, which flopped commercially and spectacularly but still showcased her acting range alongside popular actors and a performance like Jeff Bridges and Chris Hemsworth. Then came Harriet in 2019, where she was portrayed as the boyish Harriet Tubman. The film was a hit, and it brought her $44 million against a $7 million budget, while earning Cynthia 2 Academy Award nominations, one of which was for Best Actress and the other was for Best Original Song. She was on top of the world at that point, and everyone thought that she would be amongst a list of some of the biggest stars. But little did she know, hell was closing in soon. The downfall's beginning. After the success of Harriet, Erivo's career hit a huge wall, and it was disaster after disaster. First, we had Chaos Walking in 2025, which proved that Daisy Ridley wasn't a box office draw, and that even Erivo's talents weren't enough to save a train wreck production. Then came Needle in the Timeline. This was another sci-fi project that was released the same year. However, it disappeared without a trace and without much hype overall. Then we go to the 2022 Pinocchio remake, which was a big-budget animated disaster that makes Snow White look better. After getting the trilogy of failures, Erivo recreated low-budget dramas like Drift, which was about a Liberian refugee. And this was the project that earned her a lot of praise from a handful of people who actually saw it, but otherwise came and went with barely a ripple. For someone who had been riding high just a few years earlier, this was a dramatic fall from grace. When we come to Hollywood, there is always guilt by association, and it's real because if you attach yourself to too many flaws, suddenly the casting directors would start to think that something is wrong with you, which is something that is happening with people and actors like Rachel Zegler. However, just when it seemed like her momentum had been completely destroyed, a ray of hope appeared in the form of the famous film Wicked. But would this massive opportunity save her career or expose the cracks that have always been forming around her? Wicked. The film Vicky was based on the hugely successful stage musical, and it seemed like the perfect bandwagon for Erivo's comeback. She was cast as the lead character Elphaba, opposite pop superstar Ariana Grande as Glinda. This was the big-budget musical showcase that everyone was talking about, and which cemented her place amongst the Hollywood elite. With a huge built-in fan base, global marketing push, and all the resources of a major studio behind it, this was the moment that proved that Cynthia belonged at the top. This role seemed like it was perfect for Erivo and made for her talents, which was a complex character that required both serious acting chops and vocal prowess. This role was perfect for her, and after getting a plethora of downfalls already, it was the gotcha moment for her, in order to shut off all the hate and move towards a better future. The poster controversy. The first huge red flag came in October 2024 when the official ticket poster was first revealed. Here's the thing that made it so controversial, differing from the iconic stage poster in many different ways, because it was prompting one enterprising fan to create an altered version that more closely resembled the classic imagery. The fan art began circulating on social media, picking up traction as those things do. Most actors would have either complimented the fans' effort as fake emotion or simply ignored it. Cynthia Erivo, who was a third option, absolutely lost her freaking mind. She then made a lengthy Instagram rant where she wrote that this is the wildest, most offensive thing I have ever seen, equal to that awful AI of us fighting, equal to people asking the question. None of this is funny. None of this is cute. It degrades me. It degrades us. Her long post was quite degrading to the fans themselves. The response was immediate and brutal at that point. Fans who had created the art with good intentions were stunned by the backlash that they got. What should have been a minor moment became a huge controversy, with many people pointing out their absurd overreaction to heartless fan creativity. This was just so uncalled for. Cynthia Erivo eventually attempted to walk it back, claiming that it was a human momentum, wanting to protect the character, but the damage was already done. This didn't even seem like sensitivity at this point, but it was a complete inability to leave the room and understand how normal fan-made posters were. She could have just shut it off by complimenting it because, let's be honest, it wasn't even that bad. You thought the madness was done? We're just starting out. Subscribe now because it gets crazier. Press tour. After the Wicked press tour ramped up, audiences noticed something quite unsettling about the whole Erivo and Ariana Grande's appearances together. They remember the time when they seemed so thin that it was almost like they were starving to death. Both women, neither of whom had ever been particularly large, now look so thin. That would make Olympic overdose look like child's play. Not only were they physically looking thin, but they also seemed emotionally disturbed. Their interviews resembled trauma survivors who were reliving horror experiences from World War II rather than billionaire actresses who were promoting a fun musical. They were constantly breaking down in tears over the most random topics out there, and there was a wild, terrified look in their eyes, as if the nightmare was just waiting to consume them. But here is the most disturbing thing we saw. Erivo seemed to have an emotional stranglehold on Ariana Grande, and she was hovering over her like a controlling partner while directing her responses and, in some cases, even speaking in her place. A publicity stunt is one thing, but whenever we see them together in any joint appearances, the two of them would be crying, holding hands, and being so vulnerable together that it should only be happening in private. Needless to say, it's uncomfortable to watch. These were the two co-stars who were promoting the film less, and more like we were witnessing a codependent relationship going out of control. That's where the internet fully noticed it. There were memes on social media mocking their outrageous emotional displays, and there were concerns for Ariana Grande in particular, who seemed to be barely holding on to her sanity. Some even speculated about what could have happened during production to create this bizarre trauma bonding between them. On the other hand, after this whole mess became clear, even the studios were scaling back on their public appearances because the more they cried and rambled, the more it was ticking off the audience from the film itself. This begs the question, what kind of production environment could have created this level of emotional dysfunction? Erivo's side. As the whole Wicked controversy was playing, Erivo was also busy with other stage work, starring in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. The casting choice, she played Jesus himself, which was super controversial. Artistic licensing in theater is common, but this felt less like a creative interpretation and more like a deliberate provocation or an attempt to go viral. The casting immediately sparked backlash from a lot of communities, which was quite understandable. It also formed a lot of hate and created controversy for publicity's sake rather than serving any genuine artist's vision. For someone dealing with significant PR problems, actively looking for more controversies doesn't fix anything. But then again, poor judgment was becoming Erivo's signature move at this point. So you might be wondering that when Wicked for Good hit the theaters, the whole madness would have stopped, right? But it didn't. After it hit the theater, the two girls were looking more emotionally and physically disturbed than before. Every single interview that came on became a home to thousands of interviews. The public opinion also oscillated between laughter and a genuine concern for their well-being. But what about the movie? Well, it underperformed compared to the predecessor, bringing in $230 million less, and receiving even mixed reviews from critics, whether it was their bizarre behavior that was actively hurting the film or their performance was debatable. Neither of them really helps. Audiences were constantly crying with over-the-top emotional displays and the sense that something deeply unhealthy was happening to them behind the scenes. It was a growing list of controversies and made her a liability for Hollywood. She wasn't just difficult to watch, she was actively becoming a kryptonite to audiences that wanted to see her in the first place. Look, from there, Erivo's trajectory showed a sudden pattern that became her trademark. She is a masterclass in audience aviation. Every single interview was a pity party where she positioned herself as a tortured and misunderstood genius who was victimized by a hateful world that can't even accept her genius. There was no apology, no self-reflection, and not even a pint of humility, just endless excuses and defensiveness. Hollywood is an industry that is based on the superficial appearance of likability, so Erivo's career became suicidal. Hollywood can forgive a lot of things, like mediocre talent, scandals, and even criminal behavior sometimes. But it will never forgive someone who makes audiences actively uncomfortable just to get a reaction out of them. In the end, Cynthia Erivo had the inability to read the social cues, and her tendency to turn minor criticism into an existential crisis didn't help her at all. The trajectory shows that she truly has talent, she can sing, she can act, and when she is in the right role, she just slays. But talent isn't enough when you're constantly self-sabotaging in the worst ways possible. Now, Erivo appeared in a stage production of Dracula, where she played every single character in the story. This is the one-moment show concept. And next, she will also act in Children of Blood and Bone. So what do you think happened with Cynthia Erivo? How did someone with so much promise become the industry kryptonite in just a few short years? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And subscribe to the channel because what's coming next will shock you even more.